I stood there at the altar, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst right out of my chest, watching Marissa walk toward me in that white dress. She was everything I'd ever dreamed of, beautiful, graceful, her smile lighting up the whole church like a sunrise after a long, dark night. The flowers in her hands trembled a little, and I thought it was nerves, same as mine. We said our vows, her voice soft but steady, promising to love me forever, and I meant every word I said back to her. The guests were crying, clapping, throwing rice as we walked out hand in hand, and when she kissed me outside under the big oak tree, I felt like the luckiest man alive. This was it, our start, our forever. I couldn't stop grinning, thinking about the life we'd build together, the house we'd fill with laughter, maybe kids someday. That whole day, I was floating, drunk on love and hope, and I didn't care who saw it. The reception was loud and warm, with music and too much cake, and I danced with her until my feet hurt. She laughed when I spun her around, her hair catching the light, and I thought, this is my wife now. My Marissa. People kept coming up to us, shaking my hand, hugging her, telling us we were perfect together. My mom, Eleanor, even pulled me aside and said, Tobias, you've found a good one. Hold on to her. I nodded, feeling proud, like I'd done something right for once. The night went on, and by the time we got to the hotel, I was exhausted but buzzing, ready to start this new chapter with her. The room was fancy, champagne on ice, rose petals on the bed, the kind of stuff I'd seen in movies. I loosened my tie, turned to her with a goofy smile, and said, well, Mrs. Mercer, here we are. She laughed a little, but it didn't reach her eyes, and I didn't think much of it then. Weddings are tiring, I told myself. She's just worn out. I took a shower quick, wanting to wash off the day and come to her fresh, like it was a new beginning. When I came out in my towel, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, still in her dress, staring out the window. I walked over, put my hands on her shoulders, and leaned down to kiss her neck, soft and slow, the way I knew she liked. But she flinched, like I'd shocked her or something, and pulled away fast. I froze, hands still in the air, and looked at her, confused. Hey, you okay? I asked, keeping my voice gentle. She turned to me, her face blank, eyes flat like a stranger's, and said, my body, my choice. Just like that, sharp and cold, no room for questions. I blinked, feeling like I'd missed a step going downstairs, and my stomach twisted a little. Yeah, of course, I said, stepping back, hands up like I was surrendering. I didn't mean, I just thought. My words trailed off because I didn't know what to say. I wanted her, sure, but not like that, not if she didn't want me to. I'd never push her. Never. I sat down on the chair across from the bed, watching her, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. The air felt heavy now, the romance sucked right out of it, and I rubbed my hands on my knees, nervous. Long day, huh? I tried, hoping to lighten things up. She nodded, barely, and started undoing her hair, letting it fall in waves like nothing had happened. I kept waiting for her to say more, to explain, but she didn't. She just got up, went to the bathroom, and closed the door. I heard the water run, and I sat there, staring at the rose petals on the bed, feeling dumb for being so excited. It's our wedding night, I thought. Shouldn't we be close? Shouldn't she want me to? But I pushed it down, told myself I was overthinking. One night. Just one bad night. She's tired, that's all. I'd waited months to marry her. What was one more night? I climbed into bed, keeping to my side, and when she came out in her pajamas, she slid in without a word. I wanted to reach for her, just to hold her hand or something, but her back was to me, a wall I didn't know how to climb. Good night, I said, soft, hoping she'd turn around. Night, she mumbled, and that was it. I lay there, eyes on the ceiling, listening to her breathe, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. This wasn't how I'd pictured it, none of it, but I told myself it'd be okay. Tomorrow, she'd wake up smiling, and we'd laugh about how tired we were. I loved her too much to let this bother me. She's my wife, I thought, closing my eyes. We've got time. I kept repeating that in my head, like a prayer, until sleep finally took me. But deep down, something felt off, like a crack I couldn't see yet, and I didn't know how to fix it. One night, I told myself again. One night. The weeks after the wedding blurred into each other, and I kept waiting for things to feel normal, like we'd settle into being husband and wife the way I'd always imagined. But the bed stayed cold. Not just that first night, every night. I'd lie there next to Marissa, close enough to feel her warmth, but it was like a sheet of ice sat between us. I'd turn to her sometimes, hopeful, my hand brushing her arm or my voice low, asking if she wanted to be close. "Not tonight, Tobias," she'd say, soft but firm, or sometimes just, "I'm tired." I'd nod, roll over, and stare at the wall, telling myself to be patient. She's still adjusting, I thought. Marriage is new for both of us. I didn't want to push her. I loved her too much for that. But the distance grew, and it started gnawing at me, quiet and steady, like a leak I couldn't find. I tried talking to her about it, gentle at first. One morning over coffee, I sat across from her at the kitchen table, the sun spilling in through the window, and said, "Hey, is everything okay with us? I mean, with being close." She barely looked up from her phone, just sipped her mug and said, "I'm fine, Tobias. Don't make it a thing." Her voice was flat, like I'd asked about the weather. I swallowed hard, feeling small, and tried again a few days later, more serious this time. "Marissa, I just want us to feel like a couple. I'm not trying to pressure you, I swear, but it's been weeks." She put her fork down at dinner that night, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "I told you, my body, my choice. Stop asking." It hit me like a slap, and I shut up after that. I didn't want to be the guy who begged or made her feel trapped. I respected her too much. But the rejection stung, and it left me wondering what I was doing wrong. She started acting different in other ways, too, little things that piled up. Her phone was always face down now, screen dark whenever I walked into the room. She'd grab it quick if it buzzed, smiling at something I couldn't see, and when I'd ask who it was, she'd say, "Just a friend," or "work stuff," and change the subject. Then there were the walks, long ones, hours sometimes. She'd say she needed air, needed to clear her head, and she'd come back with her cheeks flushed and her hair messy, like she'd been running. I'd ask how it went, trying to sound casual, and she'd shrug, say, "Fine," and head straight to the shower. I wanted to believe her, wanted to trust her, but my gut started whispering things I didn't like. I couldn't sleep anymore. Not really. I'd lie awake, listening to her breathe, wondering why she felt so far away even when she was right there. And then there was Caleb, my little brother, always popping up like he lived with us. He's got that charm, the kind that makes people laugh easy, makes them want him around. He'd show up unannounced, saying he was in the neighborhood, and Marissa's face would light up in a way it didn't for me anymore. They'd joke around, her giggling at his dumb stories about work or some bar he'd been to, and I'd sit there, forcing a smile, feeling like a third wheel in my own house. Sometimes I'd walk in from the garage or the kitchen, and they'd be mid-conversation, their voices low, and they'd stop dead when they saw me. "What's so funny?" I'd ask, trying to keep it light, and Caleb would grin, say, "Oh, just teasing her about her cooking," while Marissa waved it off. But their eyes didn't match their words. There was something quick, something shared, and it made my skin itch. I'd tell myself I was being stupid, paranoid. He's my brother. She's my wife. They're just getting along. But the thoughts kept coming back, louder each time. It wasn't just at home, either. Caleb worked with me at Mercer Build and Design, the company Dad left me, and he'd been hanging around more there too. He's in finance, supposed to handle the numbers, but I'd catch him chatting with Marissa on the phone when I walked by his office. Just saying hi, he'd say if I asked, and I'd nod, not wanting to start something. But it was too much, him at work, him at home, him everywhere. One night, he stayed late after dinner, the three of us on the couch watching some movie I didn't care about. Marissa sat between us, her legs tucked under her, and when Caleb made a joke, she leaned into him, laughing, her shoulder brushing his. I watched her hand rest on his knee for a second, just a second, before she pulled it back. My throat tightened, and I got up, said I was tired, went to bed alone. She didn't follow for an hour, and when she did, she didn't say a word. I lay there, eyes burning, telling myself it was nothing. Nothing. I started doubting everything. Was I not enough? Did I miss something before we got married? I'd always thought Marissa loved me. She'd said it, showed it, back when we were dating. But now, it felt like I was chasing a ghost. I'd look at her across the room, beautiful as ever, and feel like she was slipping away, piece by piece. I wanted to grab her, shake her, ask what was happening, but I didn't. I was scared of the answer, scared of breaking whatever we had left. So I buried it, pushed the thoughts down deep, told myself I was imagining things. Caleb's my brother. I'd repeat in my head. She's my wife. They wouldn't do that to me. But the nights got longer, the bed got colder, and the quiet between us started screaming. I didn't know what to do, so I just kept going, pretending it was fine, hoping it'd fix itself. But hope's a thin rope when you're hanging on alone, and I could feel it fraying. Work became my escape, the one place I could shove all the mess in my head into a box and lock it tight. Mercer Build and Design was my world. Dad built it from nothing, handed it to me when he got sick, and I'd poured everything into keeping it strong. The office smelled like sawdust and coffee, and the hum of saws and hammers from the workshop out back drowned out the noise in my mind. I'd sit at my desk, sketching plans for new projects, houses, offices, whatever came in, losing myself in the lines and numbers. It was the only time I didn't feel like I was drowning, wondering why Marissa wouldn't touch me or why Caleb's laugh was starting to sound like a taunt. I'd tell myself I was fine, that I had this company, this legacy, and that was enough. But even there, the cracks started showing, and I couldn't ignore them forever. My assistant, Rena, was a godsend, sharp, quiet, always on top of things. She'd been with me for years, ever since Dad passed, and she knew the business almost as well as I did. One morning, she knocked on my door, her short black hair tucked behind her ears, holding a stack of papers and a frown I didn't like. "Tobias, you need to see this," she said, laying the stack on my desk. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my eyes, and asked, "What's up?" She pointed to a few emails, flagged in red, and said, "These don't make sense. They're from Caleb's department, finance stuff, but Marissa's name keeps popping up." I sat up straight, my stomach doing a slow flip. "Marissa? She's got nothing to do with the company," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Rena nodded, her lips tight, and said, "Exactly. It's weird. Look at this one. Her name's tied to some vendor payment, but we don't have a vendor by that name." I grabbed the papers, scanning them fast, and there it was, Marissa's name, buried in a line about consulting fees, linked to an account I'd never heard of. My hands went cold, but I forced a laugh, said, "Probably just a mix-up. I'll ask her tonight." Rena didn't smile back, just looked at me like she knew I was lying to myself. That night, I watched Marissa closer than usual. She was in the kitchen, humming, chopping vegetables for dinner, acting like everything was normal. I stood by the counter, sipping a beer, and said, casual as I could, "Hey, your name came up in some work stuff today. Something about a payment. You know anything about that?" She didn't even flinch, just kept chopping, the knife hitting the board in a steady rhythm. "No idea," she said, shrugging. "Maybe someone got me mixed up with somebody else." Her voice was smooth, too smooth, and she didn't look at me. I nodded, took another sip, but my chest felt tight. She was lying. I could feel it, like a weight pressing down, but I didn't push. Not yet. I didn't want to believe what my head was starting to scream. Caleb was at the house again the next day, sprawled on my couch like he owned it, talking about some deal he'd closed at work. I watched him, his easy grin, the way he glanced at Marissa when he thought I wasn't looking. She'd kiss me on the cheek when he was around, quick, light, always right when he walked in or out, and it hit me how staged it felt, like she was putting on a show. "Good to see you two so happy," Caleb said once, smirking, and I smiled back, but it didn't reach my eyes. I started thinking about patterns, her walks, her phone, Caleb's visits, those emails. Little dots, scattered, but if I squinted, they were starting to line up. I hated it. Hated that I was even thinking this way about my wife, my brother. But once the idea took root, it wouldn't let go. Back at work, I dug deeper. I asked Rena to pull every file Caleb had touched in the last 6 months. She didn't ask why, just got to it, and by the end of the week, we had a pile of reports on my desk. I stayed late, the office empty, flipping through pages under the buzz of the fluorescent lights. Most of it was normal, budgets, invoices, the usual, but then I found it. A contract amendment, buried in a folder labeled Old Projects, signed by Caleb. It shifted a chunk of ownership shares, just a few percent, into a vague holding company. No big deal on its own, but it made my skin crawl. Why was he messing with shares? And why hide it? I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was this about money? Power? Something else? Marissa's name in those emails kept flashing in my head, tying her to it somehow, and I couldn't shake the feeling they were up to something together. I stopped sleeping after that. I'd lie in bed, Marissa's back to me like always, and replay everything. Her excuses, Caleb's smirks, the way they'd go quiet when I walked in. I'd get up, pace the living room in the dark, trying to convince myself I was wrong. They wouldn't do this to me. Not them. But the dots kept connecting, and I couldn't unsee them. One night, I sat on the couch with my laptop, staring at that photo of us from the wedding. Me beaming, her smiling, and I felt sick. Was it all fake? Had she ever loved me? I closed the screen, my hands shaking, and made a decision. No more guessing. No more hoping I was crazy. I needed to know, for sure. I'd start small, quiet, but I'd find the truth, even if it broke me. Because living like this, half blind and hurting, wasn't living at all. I had to stop the wondering and start knowing, no matter what it cost. I couldn't keep living in the dark, guessing and second-guessing every look, every word. The doubts were eating me alive, and I had to know, really know, what was going on with Marissa. So, when she said she was heading out for her yoga class that Thursday evening, I decided to follow her. She kissed me on the cheek as she grabbed her bag, same as always, and said, "Don't wait up, Tobias. I might grab a smoothie after." Her voice was light, normal, but my stomach twisted anyway. I smiled, nodded, said, "Have fun," and watched her walk out the door, her ponytail swinging like nothing was wrong. I waited 5 minutes, my heart thumping hard, then grabbed my keys and slipped out after her. I felt like a creep, tailing my own wife, but the not knowing was worse than the shame. I stayed a few cars back, her silver sedan easy to spot in the evening traffic. She didn't head toward the gym downtown where she said her classes were. No, she turned the other way, out past the suburbs, into a part of town I didn't know well. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, sweat prickling my neck even though the AC was on. Where was she going? I kept my distance, headlights off as the sun dipped low, painting the sky orange and pink. She pulled into a quiet neighborhood, all tidy lawns and big trees, and parked near a little trail that wound into a park. I stopped a block away, cut the engine, and watched her get out. She didn't have her yoga mat, just her phone and a water bottle. My throat went dry. This wasn't yoga. I waited until she disappeared down the path, then got out and followed on foot, keeping to the shadows of the trees. The air was cool, smelled like grass and damp earth, and crickets chirped loud enough to cover the crunch of my steps. I felt ridiculous, sneaking around like some detective, but I couldn't stop now. I had to see. The trail curved, and there she was, sitting on a wooden bench under a big oak, her back to me. She was alone, looking at her phone, and for a second, I thought maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe she just needed space, a quiet spot to think. I almost turned back, ashamed of myself, but then I saw him, Caleb. Walking up from the other side of the trail, hands in his pockets, that easy grin on his face. My brother. My chest locked up, and I ducked behind a tree, barely breathing. They didn't waste time. He sat down next to her, close, too close, and she turned to him, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. My legs felt weak, but I couldn't look away. He said something low and quick, and she laughed, her head tipping back like she didn't have a care in the world. Then he leaned in, and she met him halfway, and they kissed. Not a peck, not a mistake, a real kiss, deep and slow, her hands sliding up to his shoulders, fingers curling into his hair. I stood there, frozen, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it'd break them. The world tilted, sounds fading out until all I could hear was my own pulse, loud and ragged. They pulled apart, laughing again, whispering like kids with a secret, and she rested her head on his chest. He wrapped an arm around her, casual, like it was normal, like they'd done it 100 times. I wanted to scream, to run out and shove him off that bench, demand what the hell they thought they were doing. My wife, my brother, but my feet wouldn't move. My hands shook, and I clenched them into fists, nails digging into my palms until they hurt. I couldn't make a sound, couldn't let them know I was there. Not yet. I needed proof, something solid, because even now, part of me wanted to believe I'd seen it wrong. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling so bad I almost dropped it, and snapped a picture, blurry, but clear enough. Her face, his, the kiss still hanging in the air between them. I zoomed in, checked it, and felt my stomach lurch. There it was, real as the ground under me. No more guessing. They stayed there, talking, touching, like I didn't exist. I watched for what felt like hours. Maybe it was only minutes, every second carving a hole in me. She'd lied. He'd lied. All those walks, all those late nights, Caleb at the house, her coldness in our bed, it clicked, loud and ugly. This wasn't new. This wasn't a fling. This was them, together, behind my back, maybe for weeks, maybe longer. My head spun, and I leaned against the tree, trying to breathe, trying not to puke. I loved them both, trusted them with everything, and they'd turned it into this. A quiet little park bench, a knife in my gut. I don't know how I got back to my truck. My legs moved, but I didn't feel them. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at that photo on my phone, the screen glowing in the dark. Her smile, his arm around her, it burned into me, and something broke. Not loud, not with tears, just a quiet snap, deep inside. The love I'd had for her, for him, started rotting right then, turning sour and heavy. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, numb, letting it sink in. They betrayed me, both of them, and I'd been too blind to see it coming. I turned the key, drove home slow, the road blurring in front of me. When I got there, the house was dark, empty, and I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the couch, phone in my hand, that picture staring back at me. I didn't know what to do next, just knew I couldn't unsee it. And I wouldn't forgive it. I didn't storm home and confront them that night. I couldn't. My head was a mess, spinning with that picture of Marissa and Caleb on the bench, their lips locked, her hands in his hair. I wanted to smash something, scream until my throat bled, but I just sat there on the couch, staring at the dark TV screen, feeling the weight of it all settle in. Yelling wouldn't change what I'd seen. It wouldn't undo the lies. I needed more than anger. I needed control, needed to know how deep this went, what else they'd taken from me. So I swallowed it down, every burning piece, and got to work. If they thought they could play me like this, they were about to find out I wasn't the fool they'd banked on. The next morning, I went to the office early, before the sun was even up. Rena was already there. She's like that, always ahead of me, and I found her at her desk, sipping coffee, typing away. I shut the door behind me, leaned against it, and said, "I need your help. Something's wrong, and it's big." She looked up, her dark eyes narrowing, and put her mug down slow. "What's going on, Tobias?" she asked, voice steady but careful. I didn't want to say it out loud, didn't want to admit it, but I had to. Marissa and Caleb. They're together. I saw them. And I think they're messing with the company too. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch, didn't gasp like some would. She just nodded, said, "Okay. What do you need?" That's Rena, straight to the point, no pity. I pulled out my phone, showed her the photo, and watched her face go hard. "Start with the money," I said. "Those emails you found, dig deeper. I want everything." We spent hours tearing through records. Rena's good with numbers, better than me, and she found the trail fast. There was a shell account, some fake consulting firm called Brightline Solutions, and it had Marissa's name all over it. Payments trickled out of Mercer Build and Design, small enough to miss if you weren't looking, but they added up. Thousands, tens of thousands, siphoned off over months. Caleb's signature was on every transfer approval, buried in paperwork he'd filed late or mislabeled. My hand shook as I read it, the proof right there in black and white. They weren't just cheating on me, they were stealing from me. From Dad's company. I felt sick, like I'd been gutted, but I kept going. Rena printed it all, stacked it neat on my desk, and said, "They're smart, but sloppy. This could sink them." I nodded, throat too tight to answer. I hired a private investigator that afternoon, a guy named Paul, quiet and gruff, recommended by a buddy from the construction crew. I met him in a diner across town, slid the photo and the financial docs across the table, and said, "I need more. Everything you can get, texts, calls, where they go, what they say." He didn't blink, just took the stuff and said, "Give me a week." I paid him cash, didn't care about the cost. I needed it airtight, something they couldn't talk their way out of. When I got home that night, Marissa was on the couch, scrolling her phone, smiling at something. "Good day?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She looked up, nodded, said, "Yeah, just relaxing." I wanted to throw the papers in her face, watch her squirm, but I didn't. I smiled back, said, "Good," and went to bed. She didn't follow. Paul worked fast. By the end of the week, he had a file thick enough to choke on texts between them, flirty and careless, talking about when it's all ours, and he won't see it coming. GPS logs showed them meeting at that park, at motels, even in my own damn car once when I was out of town. He'd recorded audio too, grainy, but clear enough, Marissa laughing, saying, "Tobias is too busy with his blueprints to notice." Caleb's voice, smug, replying, "We'll have the company soon. Just keep him happy till then." I listened to it in my truck, alone, the words cutting deeper than the kiss had. They weren't just taking my money, they were planning to take everything, make it look like I'd screwed up, like I'd lost Dad's legacy on my own. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, and I felt something shift, rage, yes, but colder now, sharper. I took it all to Felix, my lawyer, the next day. He's an old friend of Dad's, balding and loud, but smart as hell. I dropped the file on his desk, sat down, and said, "They're screwing me over. Her and Caleb. I want out, and I want them to pay." He flipped through it, whistling low, and said, "This is gold, Tobias. Fraud, infidelity, we can annul the marriage, protect the company, maybe even press charges." I nodded, feeling numb but focused. "No alimony," I said. "No settlement. She gets nothing." Felix grinned, said, "Oh, she won't. We'll bury them with this." We mapped it out, quiet, legal, a counterstrike they wouldn't see coming. I didn't want to fight in the living room, didn't want tears or excuses. I wanted it done, clean and final. That night, I cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Steak, potatoes, the works. Marissa came home late, said she'd been out with friends, and sat across from me, chatting about nothing. I watched her eat, watched her lie, and felt the rot spread. Everything she'd taken, my trust, my love, my family, was gone, and she didn't even know I knew. Caleb texted me later, some dumb joke about work, and I didn't reply. They thought they had me, thought I was blind, soft, easy to bleed dry. But I had the proof now, the plan, and I wasn't screaming. I was building something new, something they'd never outrun. They'd taken a lot, but they hadn't taken me. Not yet. The courtroom smelled like old wood and stale coffee, and I sat there on the hard bench, my tie too tight around my neck, waiting for it all to start. I'd filed for an annulment. Felix said it was the cleanest way to end this mess, better than a divorce, since Marissa had built our marriage on lies and fraud. My hands rested on my knees, steady, but inside I was a storm. Nerves, anger, and something hollow I couldn't name. I'd spent weeks preparing for this, gathering every scrap of proof with Rena and Paul, plotting with Felix to make sure Marissa and Caleb couldn't twist their way out. Today was the day it hit them, and I wanted to see their faces when it did. Not out of joy. There was no joy left in this, but because I needed to know they'd feel it, the weight of what they'd done. Marissa walked in first, her heels clicking on the floor, dressed in a sharp gray suit, like she was the one wronged. She didn't look at me, just sat with her lawyer, a slick guy with too much hair gel, and stared straight ahead, her face blank. Caleb wasn't there. He wasn't part of the case, not yet, but I knew he'd hear about it soon enough. The judge came in, an older woman with glasses perched on her nose, and the room went quiet. My heart thumped hard, but I kept my eyes forward, breathing slow. Felix leaned over, patted my shoulder, and whispered, "We've got this, Tobias. Just stay calm." I nodded, trusting him, trusting the folder he held, the one stuffed with everything we'd found. Her lawyer went first, standing up smooth and loud, like he was on a stage. He painted me as the bad guy, said I was controlling, manipulative, that I'd pressured Marissa into things she didn't want, made her feel trapped and scared. My stomach twisted as he talked, every word a punch, because it was so far from the truth it hurt. He claimed I'd been cold, distant, that I'd pushed her away with my unreasonable demands for intimacy. I wanted to jump up, yell that I'd loved her, that I'd waited, respected her, but Felix grabbed my arm, kept me still. "Let him dig his hole," he muttered. Marissa took the stand next, her voice small but steady, telling the judge how I'd made her feel unsafe, how she'd had no choice but to pull away. She didn't cry, not a single tear, just sat there, cool and collected, like she'd rehearsed it. I stared at her, this woman I'd married, and felt like I was looking at a stranger. The judge scribbled notes, her face unreadable, and I started to sweat. What if they believed her? What if all my proof didn't matter? I'd seen shows where lies won, where the truth got buried under a good story. My leg bounced under the table, and Felix shot me a look, so I stopped. Then it was our turn. Felix stood, adjusted his tie, and said, "Your Honor, we're not here for a he said, she said. We've got facts." He pulled out the folder, thick and heavy, and started laying it out, slow, deliberate, like he was building a wall they couldn't climb. First came the financials, the shell account, Brightline Solutions, with Marissa's name tied to it, siphoning money from my company. He showed the transfers, the dates, Caleb's signatures approving every dime. The judge's eyebrows went up, and I saw Marissa shift in her seat, just a little. Then Felix dropped the real bomb. He held up my phone, the photo from the park bench blown up on a screen, Marissa and Caleb kissing, her hands in his hair, clear as day. The room got quieter, if that was possible, and her lawyer's face went tight. Felix didn't stop, text came next, projected big and bold. He's clueless, from her to Caleb. We'll take it all from him back. GPS logs showed them meeting in secret, over and over, in places I'd never known about. Then the audio Paul's recording crackling through the speaker, Marissa's laugh, saying, Tobias is too busy with his blueprints to notice, and Caleb's voice, we'll have the company soon. I watched the judge's pen stop moving, her eyes narrowing, and I felt a flicker of something, not relief, not yet, but a shift. Her lawyer tried to fight back, stammering about context and privacy, claiming the evidence was faked or taken wrong. But Felix was ready. He had metadata, timestamps, sworn statements from Paul and Rena. It was airtight, and the judge wasn't buying the excuses. She leaned forward, asked Marissa direct, Can you explain this account in your name, Mrs. Mercer? Marissa opened her mouth, closed it, then said, I don't know. It must be a mistake. Her voice cracked, just a little, and I saw her lawyer wince. The judge didn't push, just sat back, wrote something down, and waved Felix off. I've heard enough, she said, and my heart stopped for a second. When the gavel came down, it was like thunder in my ears. Annulment granted, she said, sharp and final. No alimony, no settlement. Fraud nullifies any claim. Marissa's face went white, her hands gripping the table, and her lawyer started whispering fast, but it was over. She stood up, stormed out without a glance my way, her heels echoing loud in the silence. I stayed put, letting it sink in. Felix clapped my back, said, Told you we'd get him, but I didn't smile. I felt empty, like I'd won a fight I never wanted to have. Caleb's absence burned too. I knew he was part of this, knew he'd hear soon, and I wondered if he'd call, if he'd try to explain. He didn't deserve my eye contact either, not after this. I walked out into the courthouse hall, the air cooler, my steps slow. People moved around me, but I barely saw them. It was done. Marissa was out of my life, legally nothing to me now. No sympathy from the judge, no payout from my pocket. It should have felt good, but it didn't. Revenge wasn't sweet. It was just heavy, necessary, like cleaning a wound. I'd stopped them, protected what was mine, but the hole they'd left was still there, raw and quiet. I got in my truck, sat there with my hands on the wheel, and let out a long breath. This wasn't the end, not yet, but it was a start. The annulment was done, the courtroom dust settled, but I knew Marissa and Caleb wouldn't just slink away quiet. I was right. It started a few days later. My phone buzzed with notifications, one after another, until I couldn't ignore it. I was in the office, sketching a new community center layout, when Rena poked her head in, her face tight. Tobias, you need to see this, she said, holding out her tablet. I took it, and there it was, Marissa's face, soft and teary, in a video posted online. She sat on a couch, our couch, from the house I'd moved out of, talking to the camera like she was confessing to a friend. I tried so hard to make it work, she said, voice shaking just enough to sell it. Tobias was cold, controlling. He made me feel like nothing. I had to get out. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt, and I scrolled down, saw the comments piling up, people calling me a monster, a bully, saying they felt sorry for her. I wanted to smash the screen, but I kept watching. Then Caleb jumped in. His Instagram stories popped up next, him leaning against his car, smirking, saying, Some people can't handle the truth about themselves. I'm just glad she's free now. He didn't name me, but he didn't have to, everyone knew. My hand shook as I sat there, the office quiet except for the hum of the heater. Rena watched me, waiting, and I could feel her worry. They're not stopping, I said, voice low. They're turning it into a circus. She nodded, said, They're desperate. People will see through it. But I wasn't so sure. Lies spread fast online, faster than truth, and they were good at playing the game. I'd won in court, but this was a different fight, one I hadn't signed up for. I didn't want to play their way, all loud and messy, but I couldn't let it stand. I called Felix that night, pacing my new apartment, bare walls, boxes still unpacked, and said, They're trashing me online. What do I do? He laughed, rough and short, and said, Hit back, but smart. Use what we've got, proof, not drama. So I did. I sat down with Rena the next day, and we put it together, not a sob story, not some big speech, just the facts. I posted a single thread on my company's social page. The annulment ruling, blacked out personal bits, but clear on the fraud. A screenshot of the Shell account with Marissa's name. A grainy still from the park bench photo. No faces, just enough to show the kiss. No captions, no rant. Just the evidence, raw and simple. Then I shut my phone off and went to bed, heart pounding, not sure if I'd just lit a match or doused the fire. By morning, it had blown up. I turned my phone back on, and the notifications hit like a wave. Hundreds, then thousands. People were sharing it, picking it apart, and the tide started turning. "This is wild. She stole from him?" one comment said. "That's his brother in the pic, right? Disgusting," another wrote. Marissa's video got buried under questions, and Caleb's smug stories started looking hollow. I scrolled through it all at the kitchen counter, coffee going cold, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. It wasn't about gloating. I didn't care about that. It was about setting it straight. They tried to paint me as the villain, but the truth was heavier than their lies, and it was sinking them. Then the messages started coming, private ones, from people I hadn't expected. A couple of Caleb's buddies from college, guys I'd met at barbecues, sent apologies. "Didn't know it was like that, man," one wrote. "He's an ass for this." Another said, "I'm ashamed I called him a friend." I read them, didn't reply, just let them sit there. It felt good, in a quiet way, but it didn't fix the hole they'd left. Then my mom, Eleanor, called. I picked up, braced myself, and heard her crying on the other end. "Tobias, please," she said, voice thick with tears. "Don't ruin Caleb's life over this. He's your brother. He made a mistake." I stood there, staring out the window at the gray morning, feeling the words twist in me. A mistake? Stealing from me, sleeping with my wife, planning to take everything. That wasn't a slip-up. That was a choice. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice even. "He didn't just hurt me. He tried to destroy me." And Marissa helped. She sobbed harder, said, "But he's family. We can fix this, talk it out. Don't make it worse." I closed my eyes, the ache in my chest spreading. I loved her, always would, but I couldn't bend on this. "He stopped being family when he did this," I said. "I'm not ruining him. He did that himself." She begged more, her voice breaking, but I couldn't listen anymore. "I've got to go," I said, and hung up, my hand shaking as I set the phone down. I didn't want to hurt her. She was caught in the middle, but I wasn't going to carry their mess for her sake. The firestorm kept burning online. Marissa posted again, a weak defense about misunderstandings, but it flopped. Caleb went quiet, his story's gone. I didn't check their pages after that, didn't need to. People were seeing it now, the real story, and that was enough. I went to work, kept my head down, focused on the next job. The noise faded, but the weight didn't. Winning this round didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. They'd attacked, and I'd fought back, but the scars were still fresh, and I knew they'd try again. I just didn't know how yet. All I could do was keep going, keep standing, and wait for the next hit. I didn't want to go to that dinner, but Mom's voice on the phone was so shaky, so pleading, that I couldn't say no. "Tobias, just come," she'd said, almost whispering. "We need to talk. Your family needs you." I stood in my empty apartment, staring at the unpacked boxes, feeling the guilt twist in my gut. She'd been crying since the annulment, caught between me and Caleb, and I hated that part of this was hurting her. So I agreed, out of courtesy, out of some dumb hope that maybe she'd see my side. I pulled on a jacket, grabbed my keys, and drove to her house, the house I'd grown up in, telling myself I'd stay calm, hear her out, then leave. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. The air smelled like roast chicken and gravy when I walked in, warm and familiar, the kind of smell that used to mean home. Mom greeted me at the door, her eyes red but smiling, and pulled me into a hug. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice soft, and I nodded, hugging her back, feeling the ache of missing her. The dining room was set up nice, candles, good plates, like she'd gone all out to make this work. I stepped in, and my stomach dropped. There they were, Marissa and Caleb, sitting at the table like nothing had happened. She was in a blue dress, sipping wine, smiling at something he'd said. He was next to her, head down, poking at his plate. My feet froze, and I looked at Mom, who was fussing with a napkin, avoiding my eyes. "You didn't say they'd be here," I said, low, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. She looked up, nervous, and said, "I thought it's better if we're all together. To fix this." Fix this. I wanted to laugh, but it stuck in my throat. I sat down across from them, the chair scraping loud against the floor, and the room went quiet. Marissa glanced at me, her smile fading just a bit, then looked away. Caleb didn't lift his head, just kept pushing mashed potatoes around like they were the most interesting thing in the world. Mom bustled in with the food, talking too fast about how she'd cooked all day, how we used to love these dinners when we were kids. I nodded, took a plate, but my appetite was gone. The clink of forks and glasses filled the silence, and I watched them, Marissa cutting her chicken, Caleb sipping his beer, acting like we were strangers at a restaurant, not people who'd torn each other apart. I wanted to leave, but I stayed, for Mom, telling myself I could handle it. She started it halfway through the meal, setting her fork down, her hands trembling. "Tobias," she said, looking at me with those tired eyes, "I know things are bad. I know you're hurt. But Caleb's your brother, and Marissa, she was your wife. We're still a family. Can't we try to be the bigger people here?" I stared at her, feeling the words hit like stones. Bigger people? I set my glass down slow, buying time, and said, "Mom, they lied to me. Stole from me. You saw the proof." She flinched, but pressed on. "I know, and it was wrong, terrible, but they're sorry. Caleb's been a wreck. And Marissa, she's lost everything too. Can't you forgive, just a little?" I looked at them then, really looked. Marissa met my eyes for a second, her face blank, then smiled, small and fake, like she was playing a part. Caleb muttered, "Yeah, man, I messed up. I'm sorry," but he still wouldn't look at me. Sorry? It sounded hollow, rehearsed, and it lit a slow burn in my chest. "Lost everything?" I said, keeping my voice steady. "Marissa lost what she tried to take. Caleb's still got you defending him. Me? I lost my marriage, my brother, my trust, and they planned it, Mom. Together." She shook her head, tears welling up, and said, "But you're strong, Tobias. You can let it go for me. For us." I wanted to yell, to ask why I had to be the one to bend, but I didn't. I looked around the table at her hopeful face, at Marissa's calm mask, at Caleb's hunched shoulders, and it hit me. They weren't here to fix anything. They were here to make it easier for them, to smooth it over so they could keep going, together, without the mess of guilt. Mom was just the bridge they wanted me to cross. I pushed my plate away, the food barely touched, and stood up. "I came because you asked, Mom," I said, looking at her, not them. "But I'm done explaining myself. They watched me bleed, both of them, and now you're asking why I'm making a mess of it. I can't do this." Her face crumpled, and she reached for me, saying, "Tobias, please, don't walk away." I stepped back, pulled my wedding ring from my pocket, the one I'd kept, dumb as it was, and set it on the table, the metal clinking soft against the wood. "You chose your family," I said, my voice quieter than I felt. "I'm choosing peace." Marissa's eyes flicked to the ring, then away. Caleb finally looked up, his face pale, but he didn't say a word. I turned and walked out, Mom calling after me, her voice breaking. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped onto the porch, and I kept going, didn't look back. My truck was parked crooked. I'd been in a rush to get here, and I climbed in, slammed the door, and sat there, hands on the wheel. The ring was gone, left behind like the last piece of that life, and I felt lighter, but not better. They were still together. I'd seen it in the way they sat, the way they didn't flinch. Mom wanted me to fix it, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. I started the engine, pulled out, and drove home, the road dark and empty. Peace wasn't here yet, but I'd find it, away from them, away from the ghosts at that table. I thought the annulment would be the end of it, that Marissa would take her loss and disappear, but I should have known better. A few weeks after that awful dinner at Mom's, my phone rang. Felix, his voice sharp and annoyed. "She's at it again," he said. "Filed a motion to challenge the prenup, claiming you coerced her into signing it. She's got some new evidence, emails, a photo. It's weak, but we need to shut it down." I stood in my kitchen, the coffee maker hissing behind me, and felt the anger flare up hot and fast. She wouldn't stop, couldn't stop, digging for one last grab at what I'd built. "What's she got?" I asked, gripping the counter. Felix sighed, said, "Fakes mostly. We'll handle it. Meet me tomorrow." I hung up, staring at the wall, wondering how much more she'd try to take before she gave up. The next day, I sat in Felix's office, the air thick with the smell of leather and old books, watching him flip through her filing. He snorted, tossed a page down, and said, "Look at this email she says you sent, threatening her if she didn't sign the prenup. Dates are off, formatting's weird. And this photo, supposed to be you grabbing her arm, but it's blurry, staged. She's desperate." I leaned forward, looked at the picture, some shadowy figure in a jacket, could have been anyone. My hands clenched, but I kept my voice steady. She's lying again. I never touched her like that. Felix nodded, said, I know. We've got the PI stuff, timestamps, witnesses. She's got nothing real. I sat back, feeling the weight of it. Her trying to claw back into my life, rewrite the story one more time. I was tired, so tired, but I wasn't letting her win. Court came fast. I sat there again, same hard bench, same stale air, watching Marissa play her part. She took the stand, her hair pulled back tight, her voice soft and shaky this time. He scared me into signing, she said, looking at the judge with big eyes. Told me I'd lose everything if I didn't. That photo, he hurt me that day. Her lawyer paced, all dramatic, waving the blurry picture like it was gold. I wanted to stand up, call her out right there, but Felix kept me still, his hand on my arm. Wait, he whispered. She's digging her own grave. The judge, a different one this time, a guy with a gray beard, frowned, scribbled notes, and I held my breath. Her lies sounded good, smooth, and I hated how part of me still wondered if anyone would buy it. Then Felix got up, slow and calm, like he had all the time in the world. He started with the emails, pulled up the originals from my accounts, showed the metadata, proved they'd been doctored. These came from her own laptop, he said, sliding a report from Paul across the table. IP address matches her home Wi-Fi, dated after the annulment. The judge's eyes narrowed, and Marissa's face went stiff. Felix kept going, brought out the photo, zoomed in, showed the jacket wasn't mine, the background didn't match our house. And this, he said, voice rising just a bit, we've got witnesses. Paul's team tracked her that day. She was at a motel with Caleb Mercer, not with my client. He dropped the GPS logs, the audio clips, the whole pile of truth we'd built. Marissa's lawyer sputtered, tried to object, but the judge waved him off, said, I'll hear it. Paul took the stand next, gruff, no nonsense, laying out what he'd seen. Marissa and Caleb meeting, laughing, planning, never a sign of me anywhere near her that day. She staged it, he said, flat and sure. Set up the shot herself. The courtroom went quiet, and I watched Marissa's mask slip, her hands twisted in her lap, her eyes darting to her lawyer, who looked like he wanted to bolt. The judge didn't ask her much, just leaned forward, said, You got anything to say about this, Mrs. Mercer? She stammered, It's not what it looks like, but it was weak, crumbling. He sat back, shook his head, and I knew it was over. The gavel hit hard. Motion denied, he said, voice like gravel. Case dismissed. And Mrs. Mercer, don't waste my time again. She stood up fast, tears spilling now, real ones, and rushed out, her lawyer trailing behind. I didn't move, just sat there, letting it wash over me. Felix grinned, said, Told you, weak as hell. I nodded, but I didn't feel like celebrating. She'd tried one last swing, and it had fallen flat, but it still hurt, seeing her cry, knowing she'd rather lie than let go. Caleb was already gone from the company. I'd sold his shares weeks back, quiet and legal, to a rival developer who'd been itching to expand. Didn't warn him, didn't call, just did it. Felix told me later the court had frozen his accounts too, pinning a fraud investigation tied to the shell company. That night, my phone buzzed, a text from him. Please, I need help. I stared at it, his name glowing on the screen, and felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a blank space where he used to be. I left it on read, set the phone down, and walked away. He'd made his bed with her, and I wasn't pulling him out. I drove home slow, the city lights blurring past, my mind heavy but clear. Marissa's tears, Caleb's plea, they didn't change what they'd done. This was their last gambit, their final shot, and it had crashed hard. I'd won again, kept what was mine, but it wasn't a victory lap. It was survival, step by step, pulling myself out of the wreckage they'd left. I parked, sat in the truck for a minute, and let out a long breath. It was done, for real this time. They were out of moves, and I was still standing. Months passed slow and quiet after the last court mess, like the world was giving me room to breathe. I didn't check on Marissa or Caleb anymore, didn't need to. The noise they'd kicked up online faded, their lies drowned out by time and truth, and I let them slip out of my head. I threw myself into work instead, into Mercer Build and Design, but not the way I used to. Before, it was about keeping Dad's legacy alive, proving I could hold it together. Now, it was about building something new, something that mattered. I started taking on projects I'd never touched before: community centers, affordable housing, places for people who'd been knocked down like me. It wasn't just business, it was a way to feel solid again, to to put my hands on something real and watch it grow. The office became my anchor. I'd show up early, coffee in hand, and sit at my desk, sketching plans under the soft buzz of the lights. Rena was there every day, same as always, her quiet strength keeping me steady. She'd stuck with me through the worst, digging through files, facing Marissa's lies, holding the line when I couldn't, and I started seeing her different. Not just as my assistant, but as someone who'd chosen to stay when everyone else bailed. She'd bring me reports, point out fixes in my designs, and sometimes we'd talk, real talk, about life, not just work. Her laugh was soft, her eyes sharp but warm, and I found myself looking forward to those moments more than I'd admit. One night, we stayed late, working on blueprints for a housing project, 20 units, low cost, for families who'd lost too much. The office was dark except for our corner, papers spread out on the table, the air smelling like ink and pizza we'd ordered. I leaned over the plans, tracing a line with my pencil, and said, "This balcony here, think it's too small?" Rena slid closer, her shoulder brushing mine, and squinted at it. "Yeah, maybe. Kids need room to run, even up there." At a foot. I nodded, erased it, redrew it bigger, and she smiled, said, "Better." We kept going like that, back and forth, until the clock hit midnight and the pizza box was empty. I stretched, my back aching, and caught her looking at me, not at the plans, at me, her head tilted. I soughed in a way that made my chest tighten. I didn't plan it, didn't even think. I just turned to her, set my pencil down, and said, "Rena, you've been here through everything. Why?" She blinked, surprised, then leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Because you're worth it," she said, simple, like it was obvious. "You're not just some boss, Tobias. You're you. You fight for what's right, even when it's hard." Her voice was steady, but her cheeks went pink, and I felt something shift. Warm, quiet, new. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the future. Not a replacement for what I'd lost, not a patch for the holes Marissa and Caleb left, but a reward, something I'd earned by clawing my way out. "Thanks," I said, my throat tight. "Means a lot." She nodded, smiled small, and we went back to the blueprints. But the air was different now, heavier, better. After that, things changed slow. We'd grab coffee sometimes, not just at work. Real coffee, at a shop down the street, talking about dumb stuff like movies or her dog that chewed everything. I started noticing her more. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the way she'd hum under her breath when she typed. One day, she caught me staring, raised an eyebrow, and said, "What?" I laughed, said, "Nothing, just, you're good at this." And she rolled her eyes, but she smiled too. It wasn't rushed, wasn't forced. It was easy, like the pieces were falling into place on their own. I didn't push it, didn't need to. Whatever it was growing, and I let it. The company thrived. Those new projects brought in contracts, good press, people who believed in what we were doing. I'd walk the sites, boots crunching on gravel, watching walls go up, and feel proud. Not the old pride of holding on, but a new kind of starting over. At home, I unpacked the last boxes, hung a few pictures, none of Marissa, none of Caleb, just me, the crew, a shot of Dad from years back. The place felt mine now, not a shell I was hiding in. I'd sit on the couch some nights, beer in hand, and think about how far I'd come. The hurt was still there, a dull ache, but it didn't own me anymore. I'd survived them, her lies, his betrayal, and I was building something they couldn't touch. Rena and I kept working late, not every night, but enough. One evening, the rain tapped the windows, and we finished a bid for a rec center. Big job, tight deadline. I leaned back, rubbed my eyes, and said, "We did it." She grinned, tired but bright, and said, "Yeah, we did." I looked at her then, the rain streaking the glass behind her, and felt it. Peace, real peace, for the first time in months. Not loud, not perfect, but there. "You hungry?" I asked. She nodded, said, "Starving." We locked up, walked to a diner nearby, and sat across from each other, raincoats dripping, laughing about nothing. It wasn't a date, not yet, but it was close, and that was enough. I don't think about Marissa or Caleb much now. They're ghosts, fading, and I don't chase them. Silence is my justice. They don't get my anger, my time, my anything. Peace is sweeter, harder won, and I'm holding it tight. Rena's part of that, not the whole, but a piece I didn't expect. I'm not done rebuilding myself, the company, this life, but I'm on my way, and it's mine. That's all I need.